In the 1960s, South Africa's apartheid regime stood as a fortress of oppression. But it wasn't just the South African government that feared the rising tides of liberation. The United States, with its Cold War agenda, saw a threat in Africa's freedom movements too. The result? A covert collaboration to crush the resistance, a partnership between the apartheid state and American intelligence agencies. This is COINTELPRO in South Africa, the hidden war to destroy black liberation. In the United States, the FBI's COINTELPRO program was aimed at suppressing the Black Panther Party, Martin Luther King Jr., and Malcolm X. But South Africa's apartheid government was fighting its own battle against the African National Congress, ANC, Pan-Africanist Congress, PSC, and Black Consciousness Movement. And in the shadows, U.S. intelligence was actively involved. During the 1960s and 70s, South Africa wasn't alone in facing the pressures of anti-colonial movements. The CIA, fearing the spread of communism in Africa, covertly backed apartheid. U.S. agencies didn't just provide military support to the apartheid regime, they also collaborated in intelligence gathering and disruption tactics. The CIA had a keen interest in Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, and other anti-apartheid leaders. The U.S. government feared that these movements would align with communist powers like the Soviet Union or Cuba. To them, these leaders were subversive threats. The CIA had been monitoring the ANC from the 1950s, documenting their strategies, funding sources, and international support. They often sent agents to South Africa under the guise of diplomatic work, while covertly surveilling and gathering intelligence on anti-apartheid groups. One of the most sinister strategies employed by both CIA and apartheid intelligence services was to infiltrate and disrupt the resistance movements. From spying on ANC leaders to spreading false information about Steve Biko's Black Consciousness movement, the goal was clear: divide and conquer. The FBI, which was already deeply invested in COINTELPRO, shared its tactics with the South African police and military intelligence. The South African government used these tactics to infiltrate movements like the ANC, Black Consciousness, and even trade unions. But it wasn't just about surveillance. They used psychological warfare, spreading misinformation, creating divisions within organizations, and even planting false agents to sabotage trust and unity. The strategy was simple: discredit and destroy. Create distrust within the anti-apartheid movement and undermine its leaders. For example, in the Black Consciousness movement, Steve Biko was the face of a new wave of radical black identity and empowerment. He was seen as a major threat to apartheid's grip on the country. On September 12, 1977, Steve Biko was killed while in police custody. But was this just a tragic incident? Or was it part of a wider effort by both the CIA and South African intelligence to destroy the Black Liberation Movement? In 1980, Nelson Mandela, who had been imprisoned for nearly 2 decades, became an international symbol of resistance. But while the world rallied behind Mandela's freedom, the U.S. government and South African intelligence were working behind the scenes to ensure he stayed in prison. The U.S. State Department continued to list the ANC as a terrorist organization, making sure that any financial or diplomatic aid would be blocked. The CIA played a critical role in monitoring and containing the ANC's efforts to mobilize global support for the anti-apartheid struggle. As the Cold War raged on, the U.S. chose to prioritize geopolitical interests over human rights. Maintaining alliances with the apartheid government was part of their broader strategy to counter Soviet influence in Africa. By the 1980s, global protests forced the U.S. to impose sanctions on South Africa. But despite these moves, CIA operations continued in Africa, assisting anti-communist factions, including the apartheid regime, in the name of stability. Though apartheid ended in 1994, the damage done to South Africa's revolutionary movements by the CIA, MI6, and the apartheid government was irreversible. The trust that was broken, the lives lost, the unity destroyed, is still felt in South Africa today. The CIA's role in South Africa is a chapter buried in history, but it's one that continues to shape our understanding of how the U.S. supported global oppression. COINTELPRO wasn't just about domestic surveillance, it was a global war on liberation. To learn more about the secret wars fought in the shadows, subscribe to Profiteers Network, because the real story is never what they tell you.